Lavender Town. It's been memed the hell out of just because of its creepy factor and like the whole lore behind it with dead Pokemon. And you might be thinking, oh, well, this is just a chiptune song, so how hard could it have been to make? There are subtleties to this track. To start off, this track's in the BPM of 125.754. Ooh, spooky. So Lavender Town was originally made for Game Boy, which means you have to use the sound chip that was with the Game Boy, which is very similar to the NES. You have 2 pulse waves, a noise channel, and a triangle or a DPCM. If you look up what DPCM stands for, it's very confusing, but basically in real terms, it just means you could load in a sample. The triangle and the DPCM, they're like merged, so you have to choose one or the other, which I find kind of funny. It's like you can have a triangle wave, or you can have literally anything else in the world. Choose wisely. So we have the 2 pulse wave sounds. So the first one is this ARP. And I made all the sounds in Citrus. So this is the sine wave. And if you go to this SH thing, which stands for shape, and start to pull it up, then you'll see like it morph into different waves. So it starts with the sine wave, then you get the triangle wave. Ooh. Sawtooth. And then a square wave. And as you move it up, the square wave kind of shifts to the left, and the sound will also change. So if you have a pulse wave, then you can choose essentially any sound from the square wave to this one all the way to the end, or anything in between. I know the NES had like limitations. You could only do the square one, the one that's like 25%, and the one that's like at 12%. I think that's probably going to be the same for the Game Boy as well. With a very sharp envelope. That's just so I get the beginning part to be very ticky. Then we get to the second lead. That's the second pulse wave channel. You can see it's kind of shifted square wave. With another envelope, this one's not as plucky. Then we get to... It's quite a weird sound, and I thought maybe it's like some sort of sawtooth, but that wasn't quite right. So I did something sneaky. I did a sneaky little trick. It's a technique that you can use in Citrus. Let's take this track, and this is the original. And I'm going to put it into Edison. There's a part in the track where it's just the ARP and the lower lead. If you look in a section where this ARP isn't playing, then you can take a look at just that sound on its own. Let me make this bigger. We find an interesting looking shape. What is that? What is it? It is not a sawtooth. It's a very strange squiggly line. Although we will start to see patterns. Here's a lot of short squiggly ones that go under, and we'll notice that pattern repeats. That small squiggly section, we can see that again over here, and over here, and here. This is what we call a cycle. So if I was to open up the oscilloscope, now I'm playing the square wave. You can see the square wave over and over and over again. If I was to like play the sawtooth, you see the sawtooth repeat over and over again. And that's what happens with any sort of wave that you hold down for a long time. So I need to find a good starting point. It doesn't really matter where you make a loop for a cycle, as long as both the beginning point and the end point are kind of at the same point of a cycle. So I'm going to start over here. It's usually easiest to make a loop of a wave right at the crossing of this line in the middle, because waves go above and below it. Like just like that wave, it goes up and then down, and there's that center line in the middle. So that's kind of what you want to do. So I want to go to where it repeats again. And here it is. Here's that next section, that part over here, but then it repeats later on the track. So I'll go to the exact same point that I started off at. And now if I loop it, we have that exact wave of what was being used. So Citrus has this really cool feature where you can drag in any wave and it will kind of recreate it. I'm going to drag that wave file, that small selection that we made, drag that into the oscillator tab of an operator. It doesn't matter which one, but just the one that you're playing. So if I drag that, it has recreated the wave using its own sort of built-in harmonic things. If you go to the oscillator tab, you can create your own waves. So if I add like more harmonics, then we'll see the waves start to change. But if you drag the wave in, then it will try and recreate that wave that you just selected in, and it does a pretty good job. Now we can play notes using that exact wave. But you'll notice something, which I think really helps with the creepiness factor, is, let's take a look at Edison. And if we press S, we can open up the spectral view. So here's that sound again. This is a frequency spectrum, so you're seeing the high frequencies up here and the low frequencies down there. They're moving up and down, if that means that those frequencies are shifting up and down a little bit, which is a vibrato effect. So to do that in Citrus, you need to go to the pitch tab. So here's the volume, and then here's the pitch one. And you can add anything you want to the pitch. You can add an envelope, but we don't want that. We want it to repeat. So I'm gonna get rid of all these points. We don't want that. And I'll turn this up, the first node, and turn it on. So now we're starting to pitch up and down. And if I make this quicker, then, you know, it's gonna go up and down a lot quicker. Cool. When we look at the lines on here, they look like they kind of snap up and down. It's not so much like a triangle or a sine wave sort of motion. It's a very square wave kind of looking line. So we can do that. We can turn the tension up. Now at the moment, the pitch differences are a little bit too large to use. So what you can do is either turn down this node here so it doesn't pitch as much, or you can also go up to this P knob, just turn it down. So the higher you turn up, the bigger the pitch variation will be. And then the opposite is true. If you turn this down, then it'll just become more slight. So now you get this very weird sort of sound on the lead. Combined with the envelope, makes it a lot more interesting of a sound. The other way, without it, it was just very lifeless. It's the melodic representation of this picture. If you look at this picture, it's like... So it's a lot more interesting to use in the song. And all the sounds have a little bit of that vibrato effect. So again, that's kind of adding to that creepiness factor. Then we get this extra lead here. It's another extremely weird wave, which I also sampled out of the original track. I used the exact same method. Then there's a little bit of noise. That's just the noise from Citrus. If you go to one of the operators, you can just add noise by using the NS, which stands for noise. So when you turn it down, it's just a sine wave, and when you turn this up, it becomes noise, and you can mix it in as well. So that's the sound design portion of the track. Here's the piano version of it. To start off, we have that beginning ARP. It already has a weird eeriness, just those 4 notes on their own. So the first 2 notes are a fifth. And I'm gonna put this one an octave down. So you can see like it's the same, just everything has been shifted down a semitone. And when you have notes that like move just between one semitone, they always sound a little bit dark. That just repeats on through the whole track. So this is the actual lead and that lower lead played at the same time, and I've put the lower lead like an octave down, so it does kind of function like a bass line now. This song is actually just in E minor, but if we're in E minor, then this C sharp doesn't belong in that scale. Everywhere else in the track, you know, if there's a C, then it's not a sharp C, it's just a regular C. And you'll see that in the Oh, you'll see that in the melody over here. See, that's just playing a regular C, but then only until this moment you get a C sharp and a C at the same time. They're not right next to each other, but if I was like move this up an octave, then oh, that dissonance there again is a very creepy sort of interval. So when they're spread out, it's still pretty horror-esque. It's almost like it's a wrong note, so it doesn't feel natural. And that's why it's spooky, that's why it's creepy. Yeah, so that's kind of the theory and sound design behind Lavender Town and what makes it so scary. And that says a lot for a chiptune song from the 90s be so engrossing and so creepy. Thank you for watching this video. Support me on Patreon.
Like this video or never sleep again.
And watch How to Hear Dance. Please watch How to